Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav and we'll be learning today Emir Hashem Dav Kuf Chavav Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn the halachas of Daled Minim, and Emir Hashem today we will start and conclude Siman Taf Reish Nun Beis, top of Kuf Chavav Amid Beis. Zman Netilas Lulav, the proper time to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Netilas Lulav, Ubay Beis Seifim, and here we have two Seifim. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, Mitzvahs Lulav Bayoim V'loy Balayla. The time to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Netilas Lulav is by day and not by night. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut in Aleph, Bayoim V'loy Balayla, by day and not by night. We know this, says the Chavetz Chaim, Diksiv, because it says in the pasuk, "Ulekachtem lachem bayoim harishayin." You should take for yourselves on the first day. We're medayik in the pasuk bayoim. The mitzvah of the Netilas Lulav is by day, v'lai balayla, and not by night. And this is brought down from the Gemara on Mem Gimel Amid Aleph. It says the Mechaber Vayter, V'chol hayom kosher l'netilas lulav. The entire day is kosher for the mitzvah of Netilas Lulav. She'em loy not al shachris, so that if you are not able to take the Daled Minim in the morning, yitlenu achakach, take it even later. When we come Makayim, well, you know what, let's stop here for a second and go to the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in bays. V'chol hayom kosher. The entire day is kosher for the mitzvah of Netilas Lulav. V'im loy netaloi ad bein hashmashos b'yom rishon. Let's say something happened, and on the first day of Yom Tov, you are unable to take the Daled Minim for the entire day, all the way up until the time of Ben Hashmashos, all the way up until twilight. Now, we generally assume that Ben Hashmashos begins right after Shkia, and it ends by Tzeis HaKechavim. First thing we have to realize, and this is going to come into play soon when I'm going to read a Shar Tzion, but we have to realize that that's one Shita when it comes to Ben Hashmashos. One shita is that Ben Hashmashos begins right after Shkia and it goes all the way up to Tzeis HaKechavim. There's also another shita that says that Ben Hashmashos begins immediately before Tzeis HaKechavim, and the entire duration of Ben Hashmashos is very, very short. But we're used to interpreting Ben Hashmashos as beginning by Shkia and going through to Tzeis HaKechavim. So says the Mishnah Berurah, let's say let's say on the first day of Yom Tov, for whatever reason, you were unable to take the Daled Minim all the way up until Shkia, all the way up to Ben Hashmashos. What do you do then? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Mechuyev az litloi. You're still chayiv to take the Daled Minim during Ben Hashmashos. Why? Disveka daraisahu. Because what is the period of Ben Hashmashos? The twilight time of the day is Safek Yom, Safek Laila. So, if this happened on Ben Hashmashos going from day one of Yom Tov, it's now, you had the whole day one, and you're going into the night of day two, and you hit Ben Hashmashos. So, it's Safek Yom, maybe it's still day, maybe it's still the first day of Yom Tov, Safek Laila. Maybe it's already night, and it's already also the beginning of the second day. The mitzvah of Lulav, the mitzvah of Daled Minim, we just learned, is only b'yom, not b'layla. So when you hit Ben Hashmashos, you're during a time period of Sveika. We have a suffix. We don't know. Could you still be Mekayim the mitzvah or not? Well, on the first day, that's a Sveika Daraisa. The mitzvah of Daled Minim is Daraisa on the first day. So Ben Hashmashos, it's now a Safek Daraisa. So certainly, Safek Daraisa l'chumra, you're mechuyev to go ahead and still take the Daled Minim. However, says the Mishnah Berurah, ubeli bracha, but you would have to do this without making a bracha. Da bracha is heim d'Rabbanan, because we have to remember that the chiyuv of a bracha on the Daled Minim, the bracha is d'Rabbanan. So now, Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula. As far as taking the Daled Minim, that's a Sveika Daraisa. Safek Daraisa l'chumra. You have to go take the Daled Minim. The brachas, that's a Safek D'Rabbanan. Sveika D'Rabbanan l'kula. Not only should you not make a bracha, you can't make a bracha, because on the tzad that it's night, you could be making a bracha of atala. So we certainly don't want you to risk making a bracha of atala. So it's not even, you're not even going to say, Sveika D'Rabbanan l'kula. I could go l'kula. I could assume that it's already night, and therefore I shouldn't make a bracha. But I don't want to go l'kula. I want to be machmer. I'll make a bracha. No, you can't be machmer. Because if you're wrong, and it really is night, then making the bracha would be making a bracha levatala. You're not going to go make a bracha levatala. So take the daled minim. Yes, you have to take the daled minim because safek daraisa lechumra. Bracha, no bracha, sveika derabanan lekula. Continues the Chavetz Chaim, and he says, "V'ha'achrayim iskimu." The achrayim reached the conclusion, the bishar hayamim, that as far as the rest of the days of Yom Tov, beginning with day 2 and on, when the mitzvah of daled minim is only derabanan. So based on the logic that we just saw, what would you say? You would say, well, day 1, we learned if you hit ben hashmashis, you should still take the daled minim because safek daraisa l'chumra. But day 2, day 3, day 4, now it's only a mitzvah derabanan. So if you hit the twilight time, if you hit ben hashmashis, it's a sfeik derabanan. If it's day, you have a chiyuv derabanan to take the daled minim. If it's night, you have no chiyuv derabanan. Sfeik derabanan lekula. Don't take the daled minim. Says the Mishnah Berurah. No. V'achrayim iskimu. The achrayim conclude the bishar yomim that as far as the rest of the days of Yom Tov, af shahu derabanan, even though the chiyuv of daled minim is only a mitzvah derabanan, gam kein nochain litloi, it's still proper to go ahead and take the daled minim during ben hashmashis. Why? To aim by tercha. Because what are we talking about here? We're talking about a mitzvah where there's no downside. There's no tercha. So what are you saying? Sveika derabanan lekula, so I just won't take the daled minim. Take the daled minim. What's the downside? It's going to take you 2 minutes. So there's no tercha involved. Go ahead and do it. And if it's Yom, you'll be Yaitza the Derabanan. If it's Laila, so what? You didn't do anything wrong. Verak Yizaher, but you have to be very careful. Shelo Yivarech Oz al Hanetila. There you have to make sure that you don't make a bracha. Like he says, here he doesn't just say that, beli bracha. He says, Rak Yizaher Shelo Yivarech Oz al Hanetila. Now you really have to be careful not to make a bracha. Because in this case, your potter may ikar adin. You see, if you're talking about chalamoid sukkis and you didn't take the daled minim all day and now it's ben hashmashis, may ikar hadin, you are potter from taking the daled minim because the halachi is sveika derabanan lekula. So may ikar adin, your potter. If you go make a bracha now, your mamish making a bracha levatala. So that's why the Chavetz Chaim here says, Rak Yizoyer Shelo Yavarech Azal Anatila. Here, you have to be very careful. Do not make a bracha. Because if you do, it's mamish a bracha levatala. It's not only a suffix bracha levatala, it's mamish a bracha levatala. Because your potter me'ikar adin from taking the daled minim. This that the achrayim say, take the daled minim, is because why not? There's no downside in taking the daled minim. There's a 50% shot. Maybe you'll be yaitz to the mitzvah d'Rabbanan. So go ahead, pick up the daled minim and make nanuim. There's no reason not to. But ma'ikar adin, you're potter, so you cannot make a bracha. Okay, now let's go back to the Mechaber. Says the Mechaber, second line down, umikol makai. Even though the halacha is that the entire day is kosher for netilas lulav, and the halacha is that if you didn't take the daled minim in the morning, you certainly should take the daled minim later in the day. Nevertheless, we call makom. Nevertheless, says the Mechaber, we know the golden rule: zrizim magdimim lemitzvus. Zrizim, people who are zoriz, people who are proactive in their kiyum hamitzvus, people who are engaged and proactive in going and striving to be Mekayim mitzvahs the proper way. That's what a zoriz is. Zorizim makdimim lemitzvahs. They go ahead and they do a mitzvah as soon as they can. A zoriz, if he knows that the Barei Olam is waiting for him to do something, if he knows that he has a chiyuv upon him to go ahead and do something, he does it early. He doesn't sit around and wait. You have a mitzvah incumbent upon you to do. That means that the Barei Olam has an obligation on you. He's waiting for you to do something. So get and do it. What are you waiting for? You wait till the last minute? Zrizim magdimim lemitzvahs v'noit l'maisai ba'boiker. A zoriz is makdim. He goes early to go ahead and do the mitzvah in the proper time. I can't resist. Whenever the concept of zrizim magdimim lemitzvahs come up, there's a quick vart that I like to say, and that is, it's based in Parshas Bilam. Parshas Balak, I'm sorry. There is no Parshas Bilam. Parshas Balak. In Parshas Balak, when Bilam was going to meet Balak to go curse Klal Yisrael, what does it say? It says, let's find the pasuk. Here it is. Vayakam Bilam baboker. Bilam got up in the morning. Vayachavosh es asoinoi. And he went and he saddled his donkey. Says Rashi, Mikan shahasina mekalkelas es ashura. You see from over here that sinna has a way of corrupting the way people usually think. Shechavashu ba'atzmai. Certainly, Bilam was a person of stature. He was a prominent person. He certainly had avodim that could have gone ahead and saddled his donkey for him. He didn't have to go get the donkey ready for himself. But he went and he did it himself out of sinna. He was so interested in going and cursing Klal Yisrael. You know, there's a medrash that says that who was Bilam? None other than Lavan. Very old man. But he had a real history of going out against Klal Yisrael. So he hated Klal Yisrael. And to go curse Klal Yisrael, he ran to go himself to saddle the donkey. Says Rashi Viter, brings down a Gemara in Sanhedrin. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Rebbeinu Shalom said to Bilam, Rasha, Kvar ki damcha Avram avihem. Avram Avinu, Avram the forefather of Klal Yisrael, beat you to the punch. Shenemar, because it says in the pasuk by the Akedah, Vayashkem Avraham baboker. Yeah, Avram Avinu got up early in the morning. Vayachavosh es chamorai, and he saddled his chamor. He went ahead and he saddled his donkey. So Rav Moshe asks, what was this conversation between the Rabbeinu Shalom and Bilam? All we saw in the pasuk was that Bilam got up and he went there and he saddled his own donkey. And Rashi said from there, what do you see? You see Sinna Mekalkelas es Ashura. His hatred drove him to have such an interest in going and cursing Klal Yisrael that he went ahead and he saddled the donkey himself. But we don't see from there. This is brought down from, I don't see where it's brought down from, but we don't see from there that Bilam was having a conversation with the Rebbeinu Shalom, that there was something that he was trying to accomplish. It's just he was driven. He was a Zoriz. He was driven to go curse Klal Yisrael. So he saddled the donkey by himself. Now we have from the Gemara in Sanhedrin that there was a whole conversation that the Rebbeinu Shalom told Bilam, Rasha, Avram Avinu beat you to the punch. What does that mean? Avram Avinu was also a Zariz. Avram Avinu was a Zariz by the Akedah. He got up early in the morning and he saddled his own donkey. And he did that many years earlier. So what? What does that have to do with Bilam? So Rav Moshe says like this. He says, Bilam was no dummy. Bilam wanted to curse Klal Yisrael. But Bilam understood that in order for him to be successful in cursing Klal Yisrael, he would have to find a kidrig. He would have to find some flaw in Klal Yisrael that he could go ahead and exploit. He needed something to be able to come to the Rebbeinu Shalom and say they're deserving of a curse because they're lacking in a certain area. So what Bilam did was like this. He said, I'm going to do something that the Rebbeinu Shalom is not happy with. So I'm going to do something that's ra, so to speak. I'm going to, for my own agenda, I'm going to pursue my agenda. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to be a Zoriz. I'm going to get up, I'm going to get up early, and I'm going to go saddle my own donkey. I'm going to be Moser Nefesh, and I'm going to be Zoriz to go saddle my own donkey to take care of my personal agenda to go curse Klal Yisrael. That is going to create a kitrig on Klal Yisrael. Why? Because the Rebbeinu Shalom, look, I'll come to the Rebbeinu Shalom and say, look at the Besiris Nefesh that I have for my own agenda. Look at the Zerizus that I have for my own agenda. Does Klal Yisrael have that level of Zerizus when they want to do mitzvahs? If I have more Zerizus for my agenda than they have Zerizus for your mitzvahs, that's a kitrig on Klal Yisrael. It's the same thing, Chas v'Chalil, if the Rebbeinu Shalom looks and the Rebbeinu Shalom sees that people get up early in the morning to go run to work. Do they get up early in the morning to go learn Daf Yomi? So Baruch Hashem, we have people who taka get up very early in the morning to learn Daf Yomi. I was just by a Siyam Hashas, somebody who gets up very early in the morning before Shachris every morning. He learns 9 blad a day, and he's Messiah Shas once a year. So Baruch Hashem, that's not a kitrig. But imagine if it wasn't that way. Imagine if the world was full of Yidden who get up early in the morning to go make parnasa. They get up early in the morning for their own agenda, but there's nobody who gets up early in the morning to do mitzvahs. Chas v'chalila, that would be a big kitrig on Klal Yisrael. That's what Bilam was trying to accomplish. It wasn't just that Sinam Kalkelas es Ashura, so he so much wanted to go and curse Klal Yisrael that he ran to get up early in the morning and saddle the donkey himself before the servants came. No, he had an agenda. He was trying to prove something. He was trying to find a kitrig in Klal Yisrael. He wanted to come and say, I'm going to do for my agenda more than they do for your Torah. Said the Rabban Shalom, not going to work. Kvar kidamcha Avram Avihem. Avram Avinu beat you to the punch. Avram Avinu, the forefather of Klal Yisrael, already taught Klal Yisrael all about Zrizos. They know all about Zrizos because Avram Avinu showed his Zrizos by the Akedah, and it's in the Torah Hakdosha. So they know Vayashkem Avram Baboker, and we have the Mesilas Yesharim, and we have a whole shar of Zrizos. We have a whole parak, 3 prakim in Mesilas Yesharim, all about Zrizos. So Klal Yisrael knows about Zrizos. You think you're going to make a kitrig? You're not going to make a kitrig. Okay. So, says the Mechaber Mikol Mokaim, Zrizim Magdimim LaMitzvahs, V'noitlum Oisoi Baboker. There's an Indian of Zrizos, and you're supposed to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Netilas Lulav in the morning. Now, this phrase of the Mechaber seems like a very simple phrase, but it's going to make us some trouble. We're going to have to work on it. But in the meantime, let's see what the Mechaber says next. Says the Mechaber next, Uzmanoihu, the proper time for the mitzvah of Netilas Lulav is Mishetane Tzachama. It begins after Neitzachama, after sunrise. Now, Neitzachama is sunrise, which means you could actually see the sun. So says the Mechaber, when does the Zman, the time period that you could be Mekayim the mitzvah of Daled Minim, when does it really begin? It begins at sunrise, Mishetane Tzachama, but the Iker mitzvahsai b'shas hahalal. But the Iker mitzvah, the Iker time to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Daled Minim is by halal, and the Mishnah Berurah will tell us why. Let's take a look right now at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Gimel, Mishetane Tzachama, the proper time, the beginning of the time period when you could be Mekayim the mitzvah of Daled Minim is sunrise, is Neitzachama. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the truth is, it begins by Amar HaShachar. The truth is that the Yom, the day, starts at dawn. And therefore, since we have to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Daled Minim by day, technically we could already start being Mekayim the mitzvah by dawn. So, says the Chavetz Chaim, V'im netaloi me'amud hashachar, if you do take the Daled Minim after dawn, yotza, you're yotza. The me'amud hashachar yamamu, because the day really starts at dawn. So if you took the Daled Minim after dawn, you were Mekayim the mitzvah of taking the Daled Minim during the day. Ella, however, why does the Mechaber say Mishetane Tzachama? Why does he say sunrise if really it's dawn? Ella, mipnei she'en hakoil b'kiyin boy. We have a problem. Tane Tzachama, sunrise, is very easy to perceive. You look at the east and you see if you can see the sun. If you can see the sun, it's sunrise. So sunrise is black and white. It's not really black and white. It's kind of red and orange. But it's black and white, meaning you could tell if it's sunrise or it's not sunrise. Dawn is not so clear. Since not everybody is bucky to be able to look out the window and see if it's dawn, and they didn't have My Zmanim, and they don't have a Zmanim app on their phone, and they don't have a Zmanim calendar, they judged the Zmanim by the physical facts. They went and they looked at the sky. But Neitzachama is very easily discernible. They could understand, they could know if it's Neitz or it's not Neitz. Amud HaShachar is not readily discernible. So therefore the Chazal said, Tzrichin lahamtin ad Neitzachama, we have to wait until Neitz Hachama so that people should not make a mistake. So this is Pshat. Chazal were misakin this. Chazal said, we don't want you, even if you have a Zmanim calendar, so you don't have to be a bucky, and you know when Amud HaShachar is, don't walk away from this Sif Katan in Shulchan Aruch and say it's not Negeya to me because I have a calendar. So I know when Amud HaShachar is, so I'll take the Daled Minim after Amud HaShachar. No. There's Beferish Halach in the Mechaber. The proper Zman for being Mekayim the mitzvah of Daled Minim starts at Netzach Hama, not at Amud HaShachar. Why did they make it Netzach Hama? Because of this problem, She'ein HaKol B'kiyin, where people might make mistakes. But once they did it, they did it. The Zman begins at Netzach Hama, not at Amud HaShachar. V'ayin le'el b'Siman Peites b'Biur Halacha. He sends us back to Siman Peites. The Biur Halacha, the Lefidas Kama Achroinim, Einen Nikra Amud HaShachar at Sheheir Pnei HaMizrach. We should realize what Amud HaShachar means. Amud HaShachar means not only when there's some light on the eastern horizon, it means when the eastern horizon is completely lit up. That's what constitutes Amud HaShachar. Ois Katan Dalet says to Mishnah Berurah, the Mechaber said that the Iker mitzvah of Daled Minim is by Hallel. B'Shas Hallel says to Mishnah Berurah, why? Why by Hallel? What does Hallel have to do with the Daled Minim? So we know the answer already. Because remember, we learned out from a pasuk in Divrei Hayomim that the Nanuim, I guess it's like an asmachta, asbechu rabbanon akra, the Rabbanon of the Nanuim was instituted that we should make Nanuim by Hoidul Hashem ki tov ki Elolam chastai and by Ana Hashem Oishiana. Why? Because of the pasuk in Divrei Hayomim that says Oz Yiranenu Atzei Hayar, the branches of the forest will rejoice. Klal Yisrael will take the branches of the forest, they'll take the lulav, and they'll rejoice with them. And the pasuk over there says Hoidul Hashem ki tov ki Elolam chastai, and then we have the next pasuk that says Ve'imru Hoshienu Elikei Yishenu. That's Ana Hashem Oishiana. Uktsas, and here we have a key phrase in the Mishnah Berurah. Uktsas min hamahadrim. There are some mahadrim, noyagim levarich ala lulav, who have the minute to make a bracha on the lulav, b'hanetzach hama. They do it early by netzach hama. This is the problematic phrase that I said the Mechaber says. The Mechaber says, B'kal makam zrizim akdim l'mitzvahs v'noitel ma'isar b'boiker. So the Mechaber tells us that there's an inyan of Zerizus. There's an inyan of Zerizid Magdimin. So the Mishnah Berurah tells us there are Mahadrim that are noyig to make a bracha on the lulav by Neitz Hachama in order to be Mekayim this Hidur of Zerizus. They want to be Mekayim Zerizid Magdimin l'mitzvahs. Since the Zman starts at Neitz Hachama, they want to be Mekayim the mitzvah immediately by Neitz Hachama. And they do it, says the Mishnah Berurah, B'soy Chasukkah. They do it in the sukkah. That's another level of hidur. Another level of hidur, al pisoid, is that they take the daled minim in the sukkah. So these are two different hidurim. One hidur is a hidur of zrizin magdimin lemitzvahs to go ahead and don't wait. You're going to daven by an 8 o'clock minyan. You're first going to say Hallel at 8:35, 8:40, 8:45. That's when you're first going to say Hallel. Don't wait to take the daled minim until 8:45 in the morning. The Zman starts at Neitz Hachama. It's reason Makdim and Lemitzvahs. So right away by Neitz, go ahead, take the lulav, make the bracha, and make the nanuim. That's one hidur. The other hidur is to go ahead and do it in the shul, in the sukkah. To go ahead and do it in the sukkah. But these are two different hidurim. They're not dependent one on the other. Even if your minig is not to make the bracha on the lulav by Neitz Hachama, but to do it after Shacharis before Hallel, you could still go into the shul sukkah and make the bracha in the shul sukkah and be mekayim that hidur. These two hidurim are not dependent one on the other. Ulinanea, and when they do make the bracha on the lulav early in the morning, they make nanuim. And then by Hallel, they go ahead and they make nanuim again. Now, this is a very, very touchy and complex question. The question over here of, should you wait until right before Hallel and make the bracha on the daled minim right before Hallel? Make your bracha and make your nenuim after Shacharis right before Hallel? Or should you better go ahead and do it early in the morning to be B'kayim Zerizin Magdimin? Now, in that case, it turns out that you're making the bracha on the daled minim before you daven. Now, that's not so pashut either. It's like Rav Moshe writes in the Tshuva. He says if we have two mitzvahs, Tadar Yisheda, Tadar Kaidim, really Shacharis is the mitzvah that's more Tadar, it's more common, it's more frequent. That mitzvah comes before the daled minim. So why are you doing the mitzvah of the daled minim first? Now there are answers to that. One answer to that is that these are not two mitzvahs that I'm ready to be Mekayim right now. I'm not ready to daven v'sikin right now. That's not the minyan that I daven in. I have a minyan kavua that I daven in every day. I daven at the 8 o'clock minyan every day. So now by Neit Tzachama, I have my minyan kavua at 8 o'clock. That's when I'm going to daven chakras. But my lulav and esrog are right here, right now. And my sukkah is right here. So I could go out to the sukkah, I could make a bracha, I could make nanuim. So it's a little complex. We have a beautiful, very beautiful Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says over here, V'da, and you should know, the Torah v'Hashulchan Aruch Kosvu, the Torah and the Mechaber write, the Iker mitzvasai b'shasa halal, that the Iker time for the mitzvah of Daled Minim is by halal. V'hu dvar tema. The Aruch HaShulchan says this is tamua, this is a wonder. Demi kaidem amru, because earlier the Shulchan Aruch says there's reason magdimin umavarchin miyad ba'aneitz. Right? What does the Mechaber say? The Mechaber says when we come makom zrizin magdimin lemitzvahs v'noit l'maisar ba'boker. You should take the Daled Minim right away in the morning. Why? Because zrizin magdimin uzmanahu mishatanei tzachama, and the zman begins by nates. So the implication on the Mechaber is the zman starts at nates. There's an Indian of zrizin magdimim. Take the Daled Minim right by nates. And then he turns around and he says, V'ikar mitzvasa b'shasa halal. So the Aruch HaShulchan is bewildered by this. He says it's a tamua. V'harei ha'halal hu har b'achar nates. Halal, even if you daven by a v'sikin minyan, halal is after nates. So what are we waiting around for? V'oid, and furthermore, says the Aruch HaShulchan, Deloi shamanu af miyoiser mahadrim. We never heard, even from the mamish to mahadrin min mahadrin, sheyamtinu melavarech halal, that anybody should wait to make the bracha until halal. You hear what the Aruch HaShulchan says? The Aruch HaShulchan says, we never heard such a thing, that people should wait until right before halal to make the bracha. Ella, he says, the kavanasam kenu. It must be the kavanah of the Torah, and the Shulchan Aruch is like this. If you have a situation where you're only going to have the Daled Minim you only have availability for a few minutes, and if you make the bracha on the Daled Minim in the morning, right by nates, you're not going to be able to have it by halal. There's one lulav and esrog in town. You have to make an appointment. So you have a choice. You can make the appointment by Neit Tzachama, and then you could be yoitza, there's reason magdimin, and you can make a bracha and nanuim right by nates. But then you're not going to have the appointment by halal. Somebody else is going to have the appointment by halal. You're not going to have Daled Minim by halal. In that case, the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch say, mutav lahamtin ad ha-halel, it's better to wait until halel, or levarich oz, and make the bracha then, k'dei l'nanea b'hoidu v'ana k'takanas chacham. So that you should be able to be mekayim, the ikar kavana of takanas chazal, to make nanuim by hoidul Hashem kitov, and by ana Hashem oishiyona. So you have a choice. You could either have the Daled Minim then, or you could have the Daled Minim then. The ikar is to have the Daled Minim by halal. But if you have your own set of Daled Minim, and you can have it as much as you want, certainly you should be mekayim these two hidurim. You should be mekayim zrizim magdim and lemitzvahs, and you should make the bracha al netilas lulav early in the morning in the sukkah and make nanuim. And then bring them to shul with you for halal. V'kach nagu gedolei olam v'chol Yisrael. And Aruch HaShulchan says that's the minig of the Gedolei Yisrael, and that's the minig, says Aruch HaShulchan, of Kol Yisrael. So says the Aruch HaShulchan. Okay, there was a very nice Dirshu footnote way back when in Siman Taf Reish Mem Dalid. It's Siman Taf Reish Mem Dalid. It is Kof Yud Amud Beis. Dirshu footnote number 1 in the second column of the footnote. He says over here, "V'ha'im zesh is reason makdim lemitzvus l'kai mitzvus lulav yesh levarich al lulav aflif ne'atfila." Is reason makdim lemitzvus, is that a reason why you should make the bracha on the lulav before davening? Over here in Taf Reish Mem Dalid, it says that you make the bracha after davening. Shachris achar chazaras hatfila noitlin alulav umavarchin. So the Shulchan Aruch says over here, Taf Reish Mem Dalid, you make the bracha after davening. Ubir agra, and the Gra explains she'ikar mitzvah lulav b'shas halal, right? Like the Mechaber says by us that the ikar mitzvah is by halal. Me'idach, however, on the other hand, The Mishnah Berurah Kamon in Siman Tafresh Nun Aleph Kasav B'Shem Ari. We had in the name of the Ari Sheyavarach Al Lulav Tchila B'Sukkah, that you should make the bracha early in the Sukkah. V'achakach Yaseh Shar Nanuim B'Beis HaKnesses Ubir B'Shar Tzion She'efshe Shetam Shel Ari Zalu Kedel Shel L'Ashes HaMitzvah, because you want to do Zriza Magdimin. Umiyat Sheyakov Mishnasoi B'Sukkah Yikayim Mrs. Lulav. Oy She'efshe Shetam Al Pi Asoid. Okay. The Ched Kasav b'Mishnah Berurah Kamon, and then the footnote points us to the Mishnah Berurah by us in Tafresh Nun Beis. Shektzas me'amahadrim noegim levarach al lulav ba'nei tzachama. That the minute to make the bracha all the way early in the morning in the sukkah. U'menanim oisoi v'achakach b'shas emiris hahalo menanim oidapam. The Ched Kasav b'Bikurei Yaakov sheyavarach al lulav b'sukkah kaidem atfila. Bikurei Yaakov says you should make the bracha in the sukkah before davening. So we have he brings down the Aruch HaShulchan also. So we have a lot brought down about this minig to make the bracha on the Daled Minim earlier in the morning, even before davening, and to do it in the sukkah. So there are those that are noig like that. My Rebbe, Reuven Feinstein Shlita, he does it. He makes the bracha in shul right before Hallel. My father's minig was to do it in the sukkah, so I kind of do a mix between the two minhagim. I do it right before Hallel, but I go out to the shul sukkah. I do it in the sukkah, usually right before davening. Okay. Now let's go weiter in the Mechaber. Says the Mechaber, third line down the middle of the line. Let's say somebody has a situation where he needs to travel. He needs to go traveling someplace. And he has to leave early in the morning. Says the Mechaber, we had in the Mishnah Berurah, really, you could be Mekayim the mitzvah of Daled Minim already by dawn. So if you have a pressing need, you have to go travel, you don't have to wait until Netzach Hama. You can take the Daled Minim, and you can make the bracha already and be Mekayim the mitzvah already after dawn. Says the Mishnah Berurah, even though this means that you're going to be Mekayim the mitzvah after dawn, and then you're going to go on your way and you're going to travel, and maybe you're going to daven whenever you get to where you're going, and you're not going to have Daled Minim, so you're not going to make Nanuim by Hallel, that's what you should do. But you should make Nanuim at the time that you make the bracha. They're not Ma'akiv, but you should make Nanuim then. Says the Ramah, 4 lines down. Hagah. V'hamedaktek, somebody who's a medaktek b'mitzvahs, yechais halulav biyadai, he should hold the lulav in his hand, kishenichnas mi beisai lebeis hakneses. When you're going from your house to shul, you should carry the lulav in the esrog. Gam, says the Ramah, b'shas hatfila, when you daven Shemoneh Esrei, you should hold the lulav in esrog. V'chein yachzirei lebeisai, and you should hold the lulav in the esrog, and you should carry them back to your house. In order to show your chavivus for the mitzvah. Pashut, you don't want to let go of the mitzvah. Now, the Ramah said over here that you should hold the Daled Minim b'shas hatfila. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut and vav, gam b'shas hatfila. V'afa pisha also lahachzik shum davar b'shas hatfila. We learnt in Hilchas Tefillah that by Shemoneh Esrei, you're not allowed to hold anything in your hand, because we're afraid it's going to be on your mind. You're not going to want to drop it. So you're going to be distracted from your Shemoneh Esrei because you're going to be worrying about what you're holding in your hand. So how do we say over here you should hold the Daled Minim during Shemoneh Esrei? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hacha kemen delekichasei mitzvah. Over here, since you're holding a dvar mitzvah and the mitzvah is chaviv to you, loy mitrid bei. It's not going to distract you. You know why it's not going to distract you? Because there's no possibility of you dropping it. You're not, oh yeah, I'm holding this thing, I have to make sure that I'm not going to drop it. Of course you're not going to drop it. It's a lulav and esrog. It's beloved to you. It's chaviv to you. There's no way you're going to drop it. You're enjoying every second that you're holding it. So memela, it's not going to distract you from the Shemoneh Esrei. V'hinei, after b'gemara isa shekain hayu oisen anshe Yerushalayim. Now the Mishnah Berurah gives a caveat to this Ramah. The Ramah says that you should hold it during Shemoneh Esrei. We said, even though you're not supposed to hold something during Shemoneh Esrei, over here there's a heter because of Chavivas HaMitzvahs. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, bottom line, even though the Gemara says that the Anshe Yerushalayim, Taka did this, they Taka held the Daled Minim by Shemoneh Esrei, like it says in the Gemara, Haya Adam Yaitse Mi Beisa, a person left his house, V'lulava Biyadai, and he had the Dal Minim in his hands. Kari Kriya Shema, he learned Kriya Shema, Umispalal, and he davened Shemana Esrei, V'lulava Biyadai, and he held the Dal Minim in his hands. Mikam Makaim, nevertheless, Kasra Achrayim, the Achrayim right, the Kahayim, nowadays, Mechzi Ki Yuara, if you do that, you're acting like a Balgaiva. Nowadays, it's not done. And if you do it nowadays, you're acting like a Balgaiva. Look at me, I'm a Medaktik B'mitzvahs, a Pashut, I don't want to let go of my Dalaminim. I'm davening Shemana Esrei with my Dalaminim. Im loy shemafursim lo Medaktik B'maisa. Unless, if you're the Rebbe, if you're the Rosh Yeshiva, if you're the Gadol, and Pashut, it's not Pshat a Balgaiva, everybody knows you're a Medaktik B'mitzvahs, that's what you are. So then you could get away with it. But if not, it's not something for the Hamayinam to do. Miu, zen noig in Kamayoim. However, what is noig even nowadays is shemalichin alulev ba'boiker ba'atzmai lebeis hakneses. Somebody should carry his dalaminim on his own to shul. Don't give it to your kid to carry. Don't give it to somebody else to carry. V'chein machzir lebeis ba'atzmai, and bring it back to your house. I've said this earlier. It drives me crazy, this that some people have, that they leave the dalaminim in shul. To me, it's such a callous that they just bring it to shul and they leave it there. No, carry it with you. Bring it home. Bring it to shul. Yeah, I know. You're going to shul in the morning and you're carrying your talis and your machzer and your lulav and your esrog. It's okay. It's fine. It's chavivas ha-mitzvahs. Like they bring down, the kids see you do that. They see the chavivas that you have for the mitzvah. Memela, they also have a chavivas ha-mitzvahs. Now, something that I'm a little bit puzzled by, I think I have the answer, though. I think it's the Bikurei Yaakov L'Shitasai. It's a very interesting Bikurei Yaakov. The Bikurei Yaakov says that when we say that you should carry the lulav to shul and you should carry the lulav back home, he says you should carry it in a manner that you would be able to be yotze the mitzvah. Meaning, don't carry. As a matter of fact, I think this might even be in a Dirshu footnote. Let me take a quick look. He says, don't carry it. You should carry it in a way that you're yotze the mitzvah. In other words, don't do it and don't hold it in a container. Don't hold the esrog in an esrog box. Yeah. Okay, it's in the back on page 90. Near the bottom of the page, the second paragraph down in the first column. If you want to be Mekayim the minig of Anshi Yerushalayim, but Lekichas Alulav Lebeis HaKnesses, by carrying it to the Beis HaKnesses, Das HaGoyin Rabbi Yosef Shabal Yashiv, Sheyikachas Alulav Mamish Biyoda, you should hold the lulav in your hand, but Loi Hefsik Nartik, not in a case. But Loi Hefsik Nartik Alulav, don't hold it in the lulav case. V'kupes es esrig, in an esrig box. Achim Machzik B'kli Mehuder, unless you're holding it in Mamish, a beautiful keli. Now, what's interesting to me about that is, l'chayra, we run into a little bit of a problem. If you have the minig that you make the bracha on the lulav after Shemana Esrei before Hallel, so when you're going to shul, you aren't mekayim the mitzvah yet. If you're going to hold the lulav in the esrog like this when you're walking to shul, you're already mekayim the mitzvah. How are you going to make a bracha now before Hallel? Right? You run into Taisus's problem that we learned about earlier. Why do we pick up the esrog upside down? Because otherwise you have a problem. As soon as you pick up the dalminim, you yotze the mitzvah. Now you can't make a bracha because it's not over lasiyasam. Right? So how are you going to carry the lulav and the esrog to shul like this in a way that you would be mekayim the mitzvah? Now you want to go make a bracha. So I don't know. It could be the answer is you could give Taisus's third pshat, and that is that you should have das, that you're not being mekayim the mitzvah by carrying it. But they don't say that, unless it goes together with the minig that you make the bracha early in the morning in the sukkah, so you already made the bracha by the time you're going to shul. So I don't know, I would be careful. If you have the minig to make the bracha right before Hallel, then I don't know if you should carry the lulav and the esrog to shul like this, because you might get into a shaila with the bracha. Tzarech oid iyun. Okay. Wow, this is getting a little bit late. I want to finish the Siman. Okay, let's go to Sif Beis. Sif Beis says the Mechaber, Asur lechol koidem sheyitlenu. You're not allowed to eat before you become the mitzvah of Daled Minim. This is a very well-known halacha. We have this halacha by all mitzvahs. Davening mincha. Unless you have a minyan kavua that you daven in. So once it's a half hour before the zman of mincha, we have to go to those halachas to see the exact zman. But you're not allowed to sit down to eat a sudas kfar. You can't sit down to eat a meal because we're afraid you're going to get distracted in your meal and you're going to forget to daven mincha. So we have this by all sorts of mitzvahs, and lulav is no exception. Also, lechol kodim sheyitlenu. You're not allowed to eat. You're not allowed to eat before you become the mitzvah of Daled Minim. If you forget and you sit down to eat, v'nizkar al shulchanai, and you remember in the middle of your suda. So by Yom HaRishon, if it's the first day, shehu min haTorah, where the chiyuv of Daled Minim is a mitzvah say daraisa, yafsik. That's always the halacha by a mitzvah daraisa. By a mitzvah daraisa, if you started to eat be'isr, if you started to eat within a half hour of the zman of that mitzvah, you weren't allowed to eat. Now you remember, you have to be mafsik. You have to interrupt your meal and go be mekayim the mitzvah. Even though you'll say, what do you mean? I'm going to eat for 20 minutes and then I could go be mekayim the mitzvah then. No, you have to be mafsik. But after the first day, when it's only a derabanan, so then if there's still time in the day to be mekayim the mitzvah, lo yafsik. You can finish eating and then be mekayim the mitzvah. But if there isn't time, yafsik, you have to be mafsik. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut and zayin. Also lechel u'ti'ima ba'alma medina shari, to eat a snack, which is if it's cake or it's bread, less than a kibeya, less than the volume of an egg. Paris, you could eat some Paris. Drink, you could drink. Shari, that's mutter. Become makom nevertheless. Ein lahakol bazeh em loy l'tzarech gadol. The Mishnah Berurah says you should not be makel on this unless there's a great need. Umisha baba derech b'chol hamoed. Let's say somebody's traveling on chol hamoed in the morning. Umitzape sheyavay l'mekam lulav. And he's on his way traveling, and when he gets to his destination, there's going to be Daled Minim there. Oy hadarim al yishuvim. Somebody lives out in the sticks in the suburbs, u'mashalchim lahem lulav, and he's waiting for the Daled Minim delivery to come. Chalamoid morning, he knows somebody's coming with the Daled Minim. Yamtinu ad chatzos hayom. They should wait until chatzos, until midday. V'lo yoser, but they shouldn't wait longer than that, because if they wait longer than that, it's going to be a chatzi yom tainus, and you're not allowed to fast on Yom Tov. You know chalamoid. I feel it'll be a rishon. Shehu min haTorah. Even if this is the first day of Yom Tov, don't wait longer than chatzos. Dasal lehisanos, because you're not allowed to fast. There are those that say, if you're waiting for somebody to bring you the Daled Minim, you're not mechuyev to wait at all. You can eat right away. Why? Because what's the problem with eating? The problem with eating, it's not a problem that you're not allowed to eat before you be mekayim the mitzvah. The problem is we're afraid that if you get involved in eating, you're going to forget to be mekayim the mitzvah. But if somebody's bringing you the Daled Minim, that person right away is going to remind you to be mekayim the mitzvah. Somebody who's weak, if you started to eat when you weren't allowed to start to eat, you started to eat already within a half hour of the zman, so a half hour before nets, you sat down to start to eat, so you weren't allowed to. You started to eat be'isr, so then, if it's the first day, this is a mitzvah say daraisa, you have to interrupt your meal. You have to stop eating. That's a sudasai. Kedin kol davar shu min haTorah shem hischal be'isr tzarich lahasik u'kedel el b'simin reish lamed esif beis. V'yom tov sheni l'didan she'aisa b'shem sveika d'yoma. Yom tov sheni that we make because of sveika d'yoma. Dinoi k'may b'yom rishon has the same halacha as day one. Ice cut test. No, we didn't do that yet. Now let's see the Ramah on the bottom line. Kuf chavav and beis hagot. Let's say you didn't start eating be'isr. You started eating beheter. The isser of eating before you're mekayim the mitzvah begins with if it's less than a half hour before the zman of the mitzvah. Now the beginning zman of the mitzvah Daled Minim is neitz hachama. So if it's already a half hour before neitz, you're not allowed to eat. If you start eating then, not neitz hachama, amud hashachar, right? Really, the zman for Daled Minim starts by amud hashachar. So if it's a half hour before amud hashachar, you're already not allowed to eat. If you started eating be'isr. If you started eating be'isr, first day, you have to be mafsik your suda, because it's a daraisa. But what if you started eating more than a half hour before Amud HaShachar? So says the Ramah, if you started to eat more than a half hour, it's an hour before Amud HaShachar, you started eating. Then even on the first day of Yom Tov, you don't have to interrupt your meal. Why? As long as there's going to be plenty of time for you to be Mekayim the mitzvah, which is hard to imagine that there won't be, because you started eating beheter. Since you started eating beheter, you're not mechuyev to be mafsik your suda. Now the Mishnah Berurah has a very big problem with this Ramah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut and test. Bottom line of Kuf Chavav and Beis. You started to eat more than a half an hour before Amud HaShachar. This means you started eating beheter. Mishnah Berurah says, take a look at the Taz. Shehiksha, he asks a barm kasha on this. Siman Peites, in Siman Peites, in Hilchos Tefillah, Pasak Kedea Rishona, we pass it like the first opinion, that if somebody started eating before Amud HaShachar, the halacha is, if you started to eat before Amud HaShachar, you have to be mafsik your meal for davening. Nothing to do with the halacha of eating before a mitzvah, because tefillah is a d'Rabbanan. Now for d'Rabbanan, you never have to be mafsik your suda, as long as there's still time for you to be mekayim the mitzvah. So by a d'Rabbanan, even if you started eating be'isr, you're not mechuyev to interrupt your meal, as long as there's going to be plenty of time for you to be mekayim the mitzvah. Now tefillah is a d'Rabbanan. Yet by tefillah we paskin that if you started eating before Amud HaShachar, you have to be mafsik your suda in order to go daven. The reason for that is because like Samaid al Hadam, you can't eat before you take care of your dam. You have to ask your Rebbeinu Shalom for your life. You have to thank the Rebbeinu Shalom for keeping you alive. You can't eat before you do that. It's bazundar halacha. Nothing to do with the problem of eating before Kiyam HaMitzvah. Not a problem of you might get distracted and might not daven. No, it's a problem of like Saman al Adam. It's a whole different ball of wax. Whole different problem. Im Kain, how is that negate to us here? Im Kain says the Taz, we're talking here about somebody who started eating a half an hour before Amud HaShachar. And the Ramah says, if you started eating more than a half hour before Amud HaShachar, so you started eating beheter, you don't have to be mafsik your suda in order to take the daled minim. Says the Taz, I don't understand. You have to be mafsik your suda anyway, because you have to daven. Because of the halach of tefillah, you have to be mafsik. The choshked b'yomtiv shetzar kiddush, and on yomtiv there's another problem, and that is that you're going to be mafsik your suda because you have to daven. And then once you daven, you have a chiyuv of kiddush. So now you have a double whammy. You have to be mafsik Yisuda in order to daven, and now you can't continue Yisuda because you have to make kiddush. So take the daled minim. We're not going to let you just keep on eating and not take the daled minim, because anyway you have to stop and you got to make kiddush. So take the daled minim. So what does the Ramah mean that if you started to eat more than a half hour before Amud HaShachar, you don't have to be mafsik. You could go, you could eat sudas shleima melch b'shaitay, and you don't have to worry about daled minim. Doesn't make sense, says the Taz. And therefore, chaylik, because of that, the Taz is chaylik on this Ramah. The Vadai tzarich lahafsik, he says, certainly you have to be mafsik your suda, memele mishum lulav. Certainly you have to be mafsik the suda, you have to take the daled minim. Well, Bekur Yaakov Teretz, the Bekur Yaakov gives up Sadoichi Teretz. He said, at least, I shouldn't say such things, Bekur Yaakov was talking about, but the Bekur Yaakov says a Teretz, the Chavetz Chaim, the Sharetzian says, he doesn't get it. Well, Bekur Yaakov Teretz, the Irish Shehischa Lechel Kaidam Amud HaShachar. What we're talking about is the person started to eat a Suda before Amud HaShachar. V'hispalel Kaidam Sheberach Birkas HaMazon. Ha! In the middle of his meal, he said, "Oy vey, what am I doing? It's Amud HaShachar, leisamad el adam." So he got up in the middle of his Suda by the dining room table, He didn't bench. He didn't end the Suda. And he davened. V'gam asa Kiddush. And then after davening, he made Kiddush. And now he wants to go weiter. He wants to be mamshich the Suda. V'achakach Chizkel hashlim Sudasai v'shachach lita lulav. And he was mamshich in the Suda. And he forgot to take the lulav. So now weiter. He's in the middle of the Suda. And he started beheter. Because he started before Amar Shachar. So says the Ramah, he doesn't have to be mafsik. The bazei tzarich lahafsik. Umoto ligmar afilu b'yam rishon came to his beheter. Says the Chavetz Chaim, v'loi brira terutzai ledina. The Chavetz Chaim says, this is not a clear teretz to me. Halacha l'maisa, k'moshe kesafti b'bir halacha, like I wrote in the bir halacha. And basically what the Chavetz Chaim says in the bir halacha is, he says, this is called that you are maschil beheter? You started your Suda before Amar HaShachar. Amar HaShachar came, you are mafsik your Suda because of Leisamid al Adam. Then you finished davening, and then you have a Kiyuv Kiddush. So you sat down, you made Kiddush, and you were mamshich your Suda, and you forgot to take the lulav. But you started eating again after Amar HaShachar. That's called being maschil beheter, because you started the first time early, but now you started the second time late. So Chavetz Chaim doesn't like this teretz. Okay, so ends Siman Tov Reish Nun Beis. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. The schluss of Limud HaTorah should be Megan Agas Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua Refuas and Parnasa and Shidduchim to all those in need. And we should be zeicher to see the B'Yisrael Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. Amen. Be well.